If you haven't done so already, do get both of the Chablis out of the fridge. If you do have a glass for each, it'd be really good just to taste them side by side. What I would just say before we start is usually whenever we say the word Chardonnay, we lose half the room. This has actually been one of our most popular tastings, and the fact that we've got 2 Chardonnays and then the Morillon Blanc with Jeff Carell coming up later, 3 Chardonnays in one night. I'm so happy and excited that so many people have partaken in this, just because for me and Louise, it's our main job to get people drinking Chardonnay again. Whenever somebody says they don't like Chardonnay, it becomes a personal mission that we will find a Chardonnay.
We take it very seriously.
So yeah, this is going to be a really interesting tasting, a chance to taste wines from the same producer, from the same area, side by side, to see how that sort of quality element, how vintage changes the style. I think this is going to be really, really interesting. And I've tasted the 2015 Vaux de Vaux before, and I'm very, very excited to be tasting it again. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Amadeo, who's going to introduce herself and talk through the region of Chablis and her lovely, lovely wines. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank. Hello, everyone. I am Amandine Marchi from Domaine des Malandes in Chablis. And thank you very much for inviting me this night. I'm very, very happy to present you a few of my wines. I didn't speak English since February, so I'm sorry if I make a lot of mistakes. I will try my best. So it's a family winery. We took over the winery with my brother 3 years ago, and we actually changed the farming. We now farm organically, so that's the main change. But for the people who know us since my mother, we actually didn't change anything about the winemaking. So the style of the wine didn't change at all. And my mother created the winery in the 70s with 7 hectares from her father. So we still farm these 7 hectares that were planted by my grandfather in the 50s and 60s. So we have the chance to have these very old vines that makes very concentrated and very good quality wines. And we also farm another 23 hectares that were planted by my mother in the 90s and 2000s. So I don't know if you want to show the PowerPoint, so I can explain a little bit about Chablis. Just a small introduction. First, the location. We are located just between Paris and Beaune. We are 2 hours by car from Paris and 1 hour and a half from Beaune. And we are actually a bit closer to Champagne than from the rest of Burgundy. So we are part of Burgundy, but we are like a small island, a bit away from Côte de Beaune and Côte de Nuit. And the soil is quite similar because we have clay and limestone as the rest of Burgundy, but it's not from the same era, the same geological era. Our soil is from the Jurassic period, so when hundreds, millions of years ago was a sea and a lot of fishes and shells and everything. And when the sea went away, actually we could keep this millions of fossils in our limestone, and that makes Chablis totally unique, actually. So the monks during the 12th century actually discovered that the terroir in Chablis was exceptional. So they started to plant different kind of vines, different varieties, but they discovered as well that Chardonnay was one of the best variety to enhance this terroir. Because Chardonnay is very light aromas, so you could really feel the terroir in this wine. So the monks actually made, comment dire, they spent a lot of time searching for the best areas to plant the vines, and they had a lot of time to do that. So they could actually start what we call now climat, that the lieu-dit, the specific areas where you have the best soil, the best exposure to the sun, to make the best wine. And that brings us in the 20th century, where the INAO, the Institute for the Appellation, created the first appellation, controlled appellation in Chablis in 1938. So that's the beginning of a great period in Chablis, because the recognition of this appellation was really important, to recognize the quality and to as a proof to our customers that the Chablis they are tasting is a real Chablis and not another Chardonnay from anywhere else. So that's really important for us. Now we have a different level of appellation, but I will come back to that later. So as I said, Chablis is important. I mean, the terroir is specific because first we are semi-continental climate, so we have quite dry and cold climate during winter, and quite dry and hot summer with fresh nights. Well, it's changing a little bit with the climate change, and I can come back about that later, but that's normally our climate. And that makes a wine that is well balanced with a good acidity level and a good sugar level. So that's important. And the soil, of course. And as I said to you, the fossils, we have this kind of stones that is everywhere in Chablis. We don't have to dig to find it. We just have to walk in the vineyard and we find this kind of stones full of fossils. And they are literally fossils of small oysters, which actually give this mineral taste to our wines. So that's really the specificity of Chablis, the soil, and also the climate. So maybe we can, well, Chardonnay, of course, as Frank said. We can plant Chardonnay everywhere in the world, usually in the semi-continental climate, but really the monks found Chablis as a great place to plant Chardonnay because the climate was perfect, the soil was perfect. And this, as I said, this variety is so fine that it can really, I mean, you don't have very big aromas that cover the terroir. It really enhances the terroir. This is the best thing about Chardonnay. If you don't, I mean, of course, the winemaking is important, but in Chablis in general, the winemakers try not to comment dire, they don't want to give something very they want to show the terroir and that's it. So the vinification is very light. We just need to use stainless steel tanks, a little bit of oak barrels, but not too much. We need really to find a good balance to have the minerality showing and not too much toasty or vanilla taste that we don't like very much. So as I said, semi-continental climate. So this is a picture that shows the Grand Cru behind. You see all the hills behind is the 7 climat of Grand Cru. During this was winter 2019. So the Chablis we are going to taste is the Chablis 2018, and I'm really happy that Évry still has some, because we don't. We are actually selling the 19 for the moment since 2 months. So the 18, which was 18 was a great vintage for us. First, the yield was good, and that was a relief, because in 16 and 17 we lost 50% of our production because of frost, hail, and fungus. So 18 was a good yield, and it was really important for us to have this harvest after 16 and 17. And also the quality of the grapes were amazing. The summer was dry and hot, so we didn't have any fungus, no mildew, no oidium. So the grapes arrived in a very good shape, with a good sugar level. The acidity level was not as high as 2017, for example, but still it's a really nice vintage that is showing a lot of minerality, especially right now that is now 2 years old. And yeah, we are really happy, and I'm happy that we are also tasting the 2015, because 2015 vintage is very similar as 2018. So we could really compare these 2 vintages that were very hot and sunny and dry. The start of climate change. So to explain to you a bit about the family, as I said, my grandfather started to plant in the 50s. In this picture, you see him on the right side. He's my grandfather, André, and Armand is his father on the left. And on the right is my grandmother, Gabrielle. Unfortunately, I couldn't meet my grandfather. He died before, a long time ago, actually. But it's a great heritage that he gave us, with very nice vineyard and in very great location, which is the most important. You know, at that time, no, I mean, you couldn't see exactly where were the best place. So in the 15 and the 60s, you just had to search and to realize where are the best clima and where are the best places to plant. And actually, I think he really chose the best one. On this picture is on the Chablis Premier Cru Fourchaume, which is one of the best places in Chablis that he planted in 1953. And then on the left picture is my mother, Lynn, who created the winery in the 70s. And on the right side is my brother and I, who took over the winery 3 years ago. So as you can see, we have some barrels. We are not 100% stainless steel tanks. We like the balance in the wines. So the 2 wines we are going to taste today, they have 2 kinds of vinification. The Chablis 18 is 100% stainless steel, and the Chablis Premier Cru Vaudeville has 20% of oak barrel, the 228 liters. So you will also have the two style of vinification to compare. So maybe I can explain to you about the levels of appellation. So we have 4 levels of appellation. The first level is Petit Chablis, which is, the Petit Chablis is planted actually on the plateau, so on high level, high elevation, but on flat land. So it's not the best exposure to the sun. And it's actually not the same geological period as the Chablis, Chablis Premier Cru, and Chablis Grand Cru that you will find on the hills. So Chablis village is on the hills, but facing north, and Chablis Premier Cru are on the same hills, but facing south. So it's really the exposure to the sun that makes a difference between the Chablis village and the Chablis Premier Cru. But the soil is the same. The soil is from the Kimmeridgian period, so with these fossils. And Chablis Grand Cru as well, but Chablis Grand Cru is specificity is very, very small. It's only 100 hectares, whereas the Chablis vineyard in total is 5,000 hectares. So it's a very, very tiny proportion. But it's really the monks that started to plant this area, and with a lot of tasting, a lot of comparison, they actually realized that in this area was the best wines were made. It's different. We have 7 different climats of Grand Cru, and they all have their own exposure to the sun. So that doesn't make the difference. The difference is really the soil. Okay, so we have to taste the Chablis first. So the Chablis 18. For me, it's a real good time to taste it now, because after 2 years, of course, we still have a very good freshness, but the minerality is already changing a little bit, and the minerality is much more pronounced than last year, for example, than 1 year ago. After 1 year in bottle, the fruits are very, very showing very well, and after some years, the minerality is showing better. And I feel it's really the case here. I don't know in English how to say yod, but it's really what we feel in this wine today.
Louise, any translation there?
Thanks for putting me on the spot, Frank. I didn't catch the word, so no.
Was it iodine? Iod.
Iod.
Oh yeah, kind of mineral iodine, yeah. Maybe.
Sorry, Mum speaks a bit of French.
Yeah, so kind of the minerally, maybe the flinty whetstone, but kind of in the more slightly, I don't know, iodine I suppose is slightly more medicinal, but that sounds negative. It's hard to translate, let's leave it at that.
As I said, 18 was a very warm summer, I mean, because the year doesn't influence the vintage. Only, I mean, the 2 last months before harvest is really important for the quality of the wine. And this summer 18 was very dry. We had 1 hot wave, and the sugar level was really high, higher than normal. So we can really feel the roundness in it. For the people who used to have Chablis maybe 15 years ago. I guess they see a very big difference now. I remember my mother sometimes adding some sugar during harvest because it was not ripe enough sometimes. And now we don't have this kind of problem. The ripeness is achieved totally, and we have something. I mean, the wine is very, very gourmand. You know, it's like a piece of cake. You really want to eat it. You know, it's. I don't know gourmand in English. It's a French word. There is no translation, I guess, but it's just very round.
Would you say that there's an issue around over-ripeness due to climate change?
Yes, for the moment, we manage by doing the harvest earlier and earlier. For example, my grandfather used to harvest early October, usually. My mother used to harvest from mid-September to end of September. And since we took over the winery, we didn't start harvest after the 10th of September. And this year we started the 31st of August. So it's starting earlier and earlier. And for the moment, we could handle the balance of sugar and acidity like this, and also by doing the harvest in a very, very short time. We try to harvest by hand and by machine in the same time in order to go very, very fast. So when we have the first day of harvest, the maturity is already good, and when we stopped maximum 9 days later, on places that is facing north, you know, where the ripeness is a bit later than the places we started at the beginning, the ripeness is also at the best. So in 9 days, we know that we can do all the places at the best time, at the best ripeness. But we don't need any problem, any mechanical problem, any problem of staff, and we need to be. It has to be in 9 days maximum. Otherwise, it could be a catastrophe, really, because the acidity is going down very, very rapidly with the weather we have. And especially because we harvest very early in late August or early September when it's very hot. So that means the maturity is going very, very fast, which was not the case when you harvest in early October. But in another hand, the good consequence of the climate change is the fact that the summer is very dry, so we don't have the fungus problem anymore. We still have a little bit of oidium, but the mildew we don't have anymore. And we farm now organically, and this good consequence, positive consequence, is very important for us, because this sickness are really the biggest problem for us, for all winemakers everywhere in the world, but it's especially in Chablis, because we still have a climate with some rain, so the fungus are still quite present.
Would you say your shift to organics kind of along with the trend, are there quite a few producers in Chablis edging more towards the organic style of production, or do you kind of stand out?
For the moment, we are not many. I wish we could do more more people, more winemakers to grow organically, but it's changing a little bit. And I think also the fact that the summer are getting drier and drier makes it more easy also to manage the grass in the vineyard. So people start to think that it could be a possibility. Also, we also see other places, other vineyards that show us the way. For example, Alsace is really in advance on this matter. They started organic maybe 20, 30 years ago, and they're almost all organic. There it's just weird not to be organic. So and Alsace is in more northern place than us, but it's a very dry region, so that makes it a little bit easier.
Is there any plan to go biodynamic as well as organic?
So we already work a little bit with the lunar calendar, but only for the vinification. That's important. I mean, it's easy. For example, when we do a bottling, okay, we look at the lunar calendar. It's the easiest first step to do the biodynamic. And I also started to do some training on the plants to see which plants we can use to treat, not to treat, but to fortify our vines to struggle from against the fungus. So that it's like, for example, for us, we get treatment, but it will be better to enhance our own strengths to fight against the ill or the sickness. So it's the same for the vines. We can actually use some plants to strengthen the fight. I'm sorry, my English is really awful.
But just building up an immunity to help combat in the future.
Exactly, the immunity. Yeah, that's the word.
Let's get the flu jab. Yeah. What can you tell us about the 2015 vintage then?
So the 15 vintage is very similar as the 2018, very dry and very hot as well. I don't know in other parts of France, but in Chablis it was the case. And so we have the balance of those two wines are very similar. We have something very, very round, and the acidity level is quite low compared to other vintages like 2014 or 2017, for example. And we have on the Chablis Premier Cru Vaudevey, or maybe I could tell you exactly where it is. The Chablis Premier Cru Vaudevey is on the west side of Chablis. It's maybe there is another map where we see the names of the Premier Cru of the Climat. So Vaudevey is on the west part between Voligno and Côte de l'Éché, and it's a very, very steep hill. The hill is 40% steep. So nobody wanted to plant on it before the 80s. The hill was too steep, so the machine couldn't actually go up. And my mother was one of the crazy ones to start planting this hill in early 80s with 4 other winemakers. So at that time, we were only 5 producers to have the Chablis Premier Cru Vaudevey. And this is why it's not a climat that is very famous. First, it's a small climat, and also only 5 producers. So you cannot really promote a wine with only 5 producers. And it's a very, very steep valley facing east, southeast, but more east. And the hill just in front is very steep as well. So the valley actually is very, very stay on the shade very long time during the day. That makes a very comment on peut dire ça? It's a very fresh wine. It keeps a lot of freshness, especially in the vintages, very warm vintages like 15, 18, 19, 20, where we are really looking for some freshness, because it's really during this vintages, this very warm years, sometimes we have some very exotic aromas coming. For example, in the Fourchaume that is facing southwest, or sometimes it's overripe, sometimes it lacks of acidity. And the Vaudeville always have a very good freshness, a very good acidity, and also a very nice salinity at the end. And this is why now the Vaudeville is one of our favorites, because we can really keep the typicity of Chablis in this wine, compared to the right side of the Premier Cru, Fourchaume, Montée de Tonnerre, Mont-de-Milieu, that are, of course, fabulous climate, but on very, very warm year, we need to struggle a little bit more to keep some freshness in it.
Just while we have the map up there, we've had a question about how many hectares there are in the Vaudeville, and in total, if you have the figure, kind of how many hectares do the Domaine de Malandes kind of own or source grapes from?
We own 3.5 hectares. And in total, I don't know. I would say it would be around 15, but maybe more. I should not say that, because I don't know exactly how many hectares there are in total. But it's not. It's not a big
you
problem.
mentioned that it had seen some oak. I assume that's old oak.
Yes, the oak are from 2 years to 5 years. We use the new barrel for the Grand Cru only, and after 1 year we use them for the Premier Cru. So this one have seen only 20% of oak barrel, but only for a small period of time. That means we never age long in barrels. We put the juice in barrels. The alcoholic fermentation and malolactic fermentation is done in barrels, and after 6 months we rack this the barrels, put this wine and blend it with the tank part, and the rest of the aging is done in tanks only, 100% in tanks. So that actually gives a lot more freshness in the wine. The too much barrel and too long could be a bit heavy, and especially in a very hot year like this, where we need to keep the freshness and the fruit and the minerality. We don't want the barrel to be over all the other aromas we could smell. So when I opened this bottle 2 hours ago, the first aromas that came out was the toast of the barrel. It was really very, very toasty. And after 2 hours, the aromas are totally different. It's the toast is not pronounced anymore. Now the minerality is really present.
We've had a couple of comments on the fact that the picture showed a bottle in a cork closure, and we use the screw caps. I believe you offer kind of both screw cap and cork. Is that common in Chablis as well? Are people leaning more towards screw caps? Is there any kind of trend at the moment, or is it just purely down to the choice of the producer?
We always make two different closure cork, but the cork we use is Diam. So it's not a natural cork, it's a technical cork. So should be neutral, it should be. It's not 100% natural, but it's more natural than natural cork. And we always make some experiences. So at each bottling, we take one bottle of screw cap, one bottle of natural cork, one bottle of Diam 3, 5, 10, and one bottle of Pro Cork. And 6 months later, and then 2 years later, and then 5 years later, we taste the experience. And we do that for all the bottling. So usually for the 6 months aged wines, the screw caps arrived on the top. For the freshness, for the neutrality, the screw caps arrived always the best. Then after a few years, it's not always the best one. Diam is really good for that because it keeps the exchange with the air is really very small. There is almost no exchange with the exterior of the bottle, with the screw cap as well. But in the screw cap, in the bottle, was some oxygen when we bottled. So we have this this oxygen exchange in the bottle with the screw caps.
I've got another question for you, sorry. In regards to sort of malolactic, do you do that even in the hop vintages as well, or is it not as necessary?
In 2019, we did one experience on one tank, because for the Chablis village, I didn't tell you, but we have 8 different plots, very small plots. And we do the vinification of everyone separately. So it's 100% stainless steel tanks, but each plot has its own tank, which actually give us the opportunity to do some experimentation sometimes on the plot. And for example, in 2019, we actually stopped before the malolactic fermentation, because the malolactic fermentation is a natural process. So normally it's just after the alcoholic fermentation, it's just going on like this. We don't have to do anything. But if we want to not the malolactic fermentation to happen, it's possible. We just put a little bit of sulfur and it stopped. And we did that for one tank just to see how it goes. And actually the result is quite good. But the acidity of the malic acid is hard. The sensation is hard. So it's good that we did that only on one tank and not for all of them, because the 19 vintage would be too hard. The sensation will be very hard on the mouth, and that would not be very nice to taste. So it's, I think, a good to balance the wine on a very big volume, maybe using this method for one tank. But not for the whole volume.
Somebody just asked then if that one tank was then blended in with the other ones, or did you kind of keep it as a separate batch?
No, we blended it. We blended it, yes. And the result is fine. I mean, I love the 2019. It's a really great vintage. It's very concentrated. Already a lot of minerality and great, very good balance.
We were lucky enough to taste a couple of bottles about 10 days ago. And yes, I'm looking forward to it coming over.
Good. And yeah, this is the picture of the Chablis Grand Cru. So Vos Désirs, and we have the big chains. We are very lucky to have two different climats of Grand Cru, Vos Désirs and Les Clos. And Vos Désirs is a very, very nice valley. We have two plots, one facing north and the other one facing south. So it's a very good balance. And Les Clos facing south, with a lot of citrus and a lot of minerality. The two style of Vos Désirs is very much more, very elegant, and Les Clos is much more powerful. So two styles are very different. It's just not even 1 kilometer away from each other, but you know, that's what makes Chablis so interesting. It's like every climat has its own personality and its own style. And that's in our Chablis Grand Cru Les Clos. It's what we use to protect the vines from the frost. Actually, the traditional mean we have to protect the vines from the frost is the candles that we warm. I mean, we light to warm up the vines when the buds are already big like this, and the frost is -1, -2 during April or May, and that's something that happens every year. That's totally normal in Chablis. But using the candles is very, very polluting, and we don't want to use it anymore. So we use these covers now, which is working quite well. It's a big investment, but it's less polluting. It's only visual pollution because it's really ugly. But it's only for 1 month during the year, so it's okay.
I've got another question as well. In terms of climate change, how is it affecting the occurrence of frost and hail in Chablis?
The occurrence of frost is not higher than before, but the problem is that in February sometimes it's very warm. It's not as cool as normally, so the buds actually come out too early. For example, this year in 2020, February we had like 20 degrees Celsius, so the buds came out in March, whereas normally it's in April, and we had some frost in April and in May. And fortunately, the frost was not with a lot of humidity. So the vines didn't get hurt, but the buds didn't get hurt. But I mean, it was very stressful because the buds were very, very big already. And that's the main challenge, the buds coming out too early. And concerning the hail, yes, it's more frequent. We have more and more hail, and the damages are really, really big. The last very big hail storm was in 2016, and we lost 5 hectares totally. I mean, the vines were, of course, were not dead. We could produce some grapes again the next year, but in 2016 we didn't harvest any of these 5 hectares, totally destroyed by the hail. And we also now have this hail net to protect the vines from the hail. It's working very well.
On a slightly lighter note, what would be the sort of best food pairings for both of these wines? Is there any dish that really sings out for you?
For the Vaux de Vez in general, I like very much with white meat. With a lot of cream. This is very French. Veal, some veal with cream, And with the Chablis, well, the classic is the oysters and the seashells in general, but only in the aperitif, with some crackers, some cheese as well. Light cheese, not something very strong, but some Comté style, for example. This is really good.
Glad you recommended Comté. I recommend Comté about 9 times out of 10 when it comes to what cheese to have with wine.
It's our default cheese.
Yeah, I've got to always have Comté in the fridge. Somebody just asked in reference to the closures. I know you said kind of you're doing experiments with aging the wines under the different closures. How long does it take to tell the difference between screw caps and corks? I think you said kind of screw caps are better tasting at 6 months, but maybe some of the corks taste better as about 1 to 2 years. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Usually we for long aging we prefer the Diam, which is not the natural cork, but the technical cork we use. The Diam, they have different numbers, 3, 5, and 10, and it's actually the number of years they advise to keep. Look, 3 years would be for the best aging Diam 3 would be the best aging for 3 years, and Diam 5 for 5 years, Diam 10 for 10 years. So the Grand Cru, for example, the old closure is Diam 10, and it's really, really good for the long aging like this. When you open it after 7 years, it's always very fresh, and this is what we are looking for.
I think that's also quite a good point of the Grand Crus. They age so well. And people always think Chablis needs to be drunk straight away, but those Grand Crus are delicious once they're mature. And it's trying to find them is a difficult thing.
Yeah, the aromas of Chablis is always changing very much. When after 1 year, it's always very, very fruity. You have a lot of peach aromas, pear, sometimes some citrus, and then after some years, you have much more flowers aromas and much more grilled taste, and the minerality is much more strong than at the beginning, and this is also why it's worth keeping the Chablis at least 2 or 3 years. I mean, for me now, drinking the 2018 is great. It's really the best moment to do it.
I think both of these.
I've got a bit of a. Sorry, I was just going I was just going to say, out of interest, this is a question from me. In terms of Chablis, do you think there is anywhere else in the world that can compete in terms of the quality and the style that you produce with Chardonnay? And if you were to pick perhaps another region in the world that might be on a par with Chablis, where would it be? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, for me, it would be very easy to say south of Burgundy. I mean, of course, it's the place for Chardonnay as well. They have much less limestone than us. They have much more clay, so the style is very different. They also have a little bit more sun, so the wine are much more ripe, but in really different places in the world. I would pick a climate that is similar. I would pick, for example, I don't know. I think I didn't taste many wines from Canada, but they have some places that are it's of course very, very cool climate, but I'm sure with the climate change that is the future, making wine in very northern places like this, and closer to us, England, of course. I mean, it's you have the Kimmeridgian as well, and Kimmerich is an English city, no? So yeah, you have everything in the future to make the Chablis in 20 years. Yeah, you have to do now to make the best wines in 20 years.
I think there's a comparison tasting lining up for 20 years' time then.
How has COVID affected sort of the vineyard work and within the winery? Has it had a big effect?
So for the sales, yes, because around 90% of our sales are to restaurants in France and in the world. So the April and May were very, very difficult months for us. The sales went down very, very dramatically because all restaurants and bars were closed everywhere in the world. Now it's getting a bit better because every country has its own rules, and you have some countries that are still having some bars and restaurants open. So that's for the sales, and for the work in general. Well, we didn't stop. Most of the work in the winery is in the vineyard, and the work in the vineyard is all year long. Every month we have something else to do. Every month we have something different. So we couldn't stop. So we didn't. And that was, I mean, and we are so lucky we didn't, because of course it was hard to still working and not selling any wine. But in another hand, we could go out, we could go in the vineyard, just smell the fresh air, and feeling very, very lucky not to be in an apartment.
And it is essential work. It is essential work.
For me, yes.
Well, this has been amazing, as I said at the beginning, just to taste these wines side by side, to taste how, it's the same region, but just that slight variation of location really changes the style. And to taste, the two wines side by side, to see those differences is a real treat. I mean, I'm sure everyone usually opens up 2 bottles of wine every night to taste side by side. But this has been really, really great, and to learn more about the wonderful region of Chablis has been absolutely fantastic.